The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and broken promises. Maya Chen-Williams stood outside the NICU, her hands pressed against the glass as she watched her premature twin daughters fight for each breath. Born at 32 weeks, Lily and Grace were so small they could fit in the palm of her hand, their tiny bodies connected to machines that beeped and hummed with mechanical precision. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Not the soft-soled shoes of nurses, but the sharp click of expensive leather on linoleum. She knew that sound. She'd memorized it over 3 years of marriage. "Maya, we need to talk." Marcus Williams stood there in his tailored suit, looking like he'd just stepped out of a board meeting rather than visiting his newborn daughters. His jaw was set in that way that meant he'd already made a decision, and nothing she said would change his mind. "The girls are stable," Maya said quietly, her eyes never leaving her babies. "Dr. Patterson says if they continue like this, they might come off the ventilators in a few days." "That's good." His tone was flat, perfunctory. "But that's not what I came to discuss." Maya turned to face him, and that's when she saw it. The slight discoloration on his collar, the faint scent of perfume that wasn't hers, the way he wouldn't quite meet her eyes. "You're leaving?" It wasn't a question. Marcus had the decency to look uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "I've been trying to find the right time to tell you. Obviously, there's never a good time for this conversation, but our daughters are 3 days old and fighting for their lives." Maya's voice remained steady, though her hands trembled. "And you think this is the appropriate moment to tell me you're leaving?" "Chelsea is pregnant." The name hit Maya like a physical blow. Chelsea Montgomery, the new associate at Marcus's law firm, 24 years old, blonde, and the complete opposite of everything Maya was. "How far along?" 4 months. Marcus loosened his tie slightly, a gesture Maya had once found endearing. Now it just looked like a man trying to breathe through his own cowardice. "We've been together for about 6 months. It wasn't planned, but now that it's happening, I realize this is what I really want." Maya felt her knees weaken, and she gripped the NICU window for support. "You've been cheating on me since I was 2 months pregnant with your children." "Maya, I never meant for it to happen this way. You and I, we were good for a while, but we want different things. Chelsea understands my ambitions. She fits into my world in a way you never could." The casual cruelty of his words was almost worse than the betrayal itself. Maya thought about their first meeting at a legal conference in Chicago 3 years ago. She'd been presenting her research on medical ethics, and he'd approached her afterward, charming and attentive. He'd pursued her relentlessly, seeming to admire her intelligence and independence. Now, she wondered if it had all been a lie. "Your world," she repeated softly. "You mean your parents' world. The Williams family dynasty that I've never been quite good enough for." Marcus's silence was answer enough. His parents, Richard and Patricia Williams, had made their disapproval clear from the beginning. Maya was too educated, too independent, too Asian. They'd wanted Marcus to marry within their circle, someone from an old money family, someone who knew how to navigate country club politics and charity galas. "I've already spoken with an attorney," Marcus continued, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket. "These are divorce papers. I'm being generous with the settlement, considering the circumstances." Maya took the envelope with numb fingers. "Considering what circumstances?" "Well, the girls. Their medical expenses are going to be substantial, and with their prematurity, there could be long-term health issues. I'm not equipped to handle that kind of situation, Maya. Chelsea and I are planning to start fresh." "Start fresh?" Maya's laugh was hollow. You have 2 daughters who need you, and you're abandoning them to start fresh with your mistress. I'll provide financial support, of course. But Chelsea and I have discussed it, and we both agree that it's better for everyone if I focus on my new family. The girls will be better off without the confusion of split custody and a father who isn't fully committed. Maya stared at him. This man she'd loved, this man she'd built a life with, and saw a stranger. Get out. Maya, get out of this hospital before I call security. You don't get to stand here and pretend you're doing me a favor by abandoning your children. Marcus hesitated, then placed the envelope on the nearby chair. The papers are here when you're ready to discuss this rationally. My attorney's information is inside. He walked away without looking back at the NICU window, without asking about his daughter's progress, without showing any emotion beyond relief at having delivered his message. Maya waited until his footsteps faded before she allowed herself to collapse into the chair. The envelope sat beside her like a bomb waiting to explode. She picked it up with shaking hands and pulled out the documents. The settlement terms were there in black and white. Marcus would pay child support, but the amount was insultingly low given his income as a partner at one of Chicago's most prestigious law firms. He was offering her the house, their modest 3-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, but she'd have to take over the mortgage payments. He'd keep the luxury condo downtown, the vacation property in Aspen, and most of their savings. Attached to the divorce papers was a note in Marcus's precise handwriting. This is fair considering your lack of financial contribution to the marriage. You'll have enough to manage with careful budgeting. Maya had spent the last 3 years of their marriage working on her PhD in biomedical ethics while teaching part-time at Northwestern. Her income had been modest, but she'd contributed to their household in countless ways Marcus had apparently never valued. A nurse emerged from the NICU, a kind-faced woman named Sarah, who'd been watching over the twins since their birth. Mrs. Williams, the girls are doing well. Would you like to hold them? We can do kangaroo care with both if you'd like. Maya nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She followed Sarah into the NICU, where they helped her settle into a reclining chair. The nurses carefully placed both tiny babies on Maya's chest, skin to skin, their warm little bodies rising and falling with each breath. This was what Marcus was choosing to walk away from. These perfect, fragile lives that needed him. Where's your husband? Sarah asked gently. Usually dads want to do kangaroo care too. He won't be coming back, Maya said quietly. It's just us now. Sarah's expression tightened with understanding and sympathy. Then these girls are lucky to have such a strong mother. But Maya didn't feel strong. She felt broken, abandoned, and terrified. The NICU bills were already mounting. Her health insurance would cover most of it, but there would still be substantial out-of-pocket costs. Her teaching position didn't pay enough to support 3 people, especially with the medical expenses and childcare she'd need. She looked down at Lily and Grace, their tiny fingers curled against her skin, and felt a fierce surge of protective love. They deserved better than this. They deserved a father who wanted them, a family who would fight for them. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from an unknown number with a photo attached. It showed Marcus and a very pregnant blonde woman, Chelsea presumably, kissing outside what looked like a jewelry store. The message below read, "Congratulations on the upgrade, Marcus. No hard feelings from the old model." Maya recognized the number now. It was from Marcus's phone, but clearly Chelsea had sent it. The cruelty was breathtaking. Maya had just given birth 3 days ago via emergency C-section. She was still recovering, still dealing with the physical and emotional trauma of early labor and delivery, still terrified that her babies might not survive. And Marcus's mistress was sending her taunting messages about being replaced. Another text came through, this time from Marcus's mother, Patricia. "I heard about the situation. This is probably for the best. Those babies would have only complicated Marcus's future. You can manage on your own. Your kind always do." Your kind. The casual racism that Patricia had never quite bothered to hide now laid bare in a text message. Maya's phone continued buzzing, more messages from people in Marcus's social circle, some expressing fake sympathy, others barely concealing their satisfaction at the marriage's end. The Williams family had closed ranks, and Maya was being erased from their narrative as efficiently as possible. She turned off her phone and held her daughters closer. "It's okay," she whispered to them. "We don't need any of them. We'll be fine." But even as she said it, Maya knew the road ahead would be impossibly difficult. She had no family in Chicago. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was in college, and her grandmother had raised her after that. But Grandma Chen had passed away 2 years ago, and Maya had been alone in the world except for Marcus. Or so she'd thought. That night, after the nurses had returned Lily and Grace to their incubators, Maya sat in the hospital's family lounge and opened her laptop. She needed to understand her financial situation, to start planning for a future she'd never imagined. Her email inbox was full of automatic notifications from their joint bank accounts. Marcus had been busy. He'd drained their savings account, leaving her with exactly $1,247. He'd removed her name from their investment accounts. He'd even canceled the credit cards she'd been using. Maya felt panic rising in her chest. She had her own checking account with maybe $3,000 in it. That was all she had to her name. That and a house she couldn't afford, medical bills she couldn't pay, and 2 babies who needed more than she could give them. She was about to close her laptop when she noticed an email she'd missed, buried among the financial notifications. The sender was someone named Robert Chen, and the subject line read, "Regarding your grandmother's estate, urgent matter requiring your attention." Maya frowned. Her grandmother's estate had been settled 2 years ago. There had been a small life insurance policy that had helped Maya pay for her grandmother's funeral and cover some of her PhD expenses. What could be urgent now? She opened the email. "Dear Ms. Chen, I am writing to you regarding a matter that requires your immediate attention. I am the executor of your grandmother Chen Mei-ling's estate, specifically related to assets that were held in a restricted trust until certain conditions were met. Your grandmother stipulated that these assets would be released to you upon the birth of your first child, as she believed motherhood would be the appropriate time for you to understand the full scope of her legacy and the responsibilities that come with it. Given the recent birth of your twin daughters, I must inform you that you are now the beneficiary of substantial holdings that your grandmother accumulated over her lifetime. We need to meet in person to discuss the details and begin the transfer process. Please contact my office at your earliest convenience. This matter is time-sensitive and requires your signature on several documents. Respectfully, Robert Chen, Senior Partner, Chen & Associates Private Wealth Management." Maya read the email 3 times, trying to make sense of it. Her grandmother had worked in a restaurant in Chinatown for as long as Maya could remember. She'd lived in a small apartment above a noodle shop. There had never been any indication of substantial wealth. This had to be a scam, some kind of phishing scheme designed to prey on vulnerable people. But something made Maya look more closely at the email address. It was from a legitimate law firm, one with a prestigious Michigan Avenue address. She Googled the firm and found a sleek website with information about their wealth management services for high-net-worth families. Robert Chen's biography listed him as the founder and senior partner with over 40 years of experience in estate planning and family wealth management. His photo showed an elderly Chinese man with kind eyes and a dignified bearing. Maya's hands were shaking as she dialed the number listed in the email. It was after 10 p.m., so she expected to reach voicemail. Instead, a woman answered on the second ring. Chen and Associates, how may I direct your call? I'm calling for Robert Chen. My name is Maya Chen-Williams, and I received an email about my grandmother's estate. Oh, Miss Chen. Mr. Chen has been waiting for your call. Please hold. The speed with which she was transferred suggested this was expected, prepared for. Maya's confusion deepened. Maya? The voice that came on the line was warm, elderly, and somehow familiar. Thank you for calling. I know this must be very confusing for you. I don't understand. My grandmother's estate was settled 2 years ago. The part you knew about was settled, yes. But your grandmother was a very private woman, Maya. She kept many secrets, and she had very specific wishes about when and how you would learn the truth about your family. Maya felt dizzy. What truth? Your grandmother was Chen Mei-ling, but she was also the daughter of Chen Wei-guo, founder of Pacific Century Holdings. Does that name mean anything to you? Maya's breath caught in her throat. Pacific Century Holdings was one of the largest private equity firms in Asia, with investments spanning real estate, technology, manufacturing, and finance across the Pacific Rim. She'd studied the company briefly in one of her business ethics courses. That's not possible. My grandmother worked in a restaurant. She did, Robert confirmed gently. By choice. After your mother died, your grandmother wanted to give you as normal a childhood as possible. She wanted you to understand the value of work, the importance of education, the strength of character that comes from building your own life. But she was wealthy the entire time? Maya, your grandmother wasn't just wealthy. She was one of the primary shareholders in Pacific Century Holdings. When she passed away 2 years ago, her estate was valued at approximately $3.7 billion. The number was so large it didn't seem real. Maya laughed, a sound caught between hysteria and disbelief. This is a scam. This has to be a scam. I understand your skepticism. Your grandmother predicted you would react this way. She left you a letter, Maya, one that she wrote shortly before her death, to be delivered when you became a mother. Would you be willing to meet with me tomorrow so I can give it to you in person? Maya thought about her daughters in the NICU, about the divorce papers sitting in her bag, about Marcus's cruel dismissal and his family's racism. She thought about the mounting bills and her empty bank account. Where's your office? 875 North Michigan Avenue. Can you come at 10 a.m.? I've cleared my entire schedule for you. After hanging up, Maya sat in the silent lounge and tried to process what she'd just been told. It couldn't be true. It was too convenient, too perfectly timed, too much like a fairy tale. But a small voice in the back of her mind whispered, what if it is true? She thought about her grandmother, about the woman who'd raised her with such love and wisdom. Grandma Chen had always been elegant, always carried herself with a quiet dignity that seemed at odds with her modest circumstances. She'd spoken flawless Mandarin and English, had been educated, had known things about art and culture and history that seemed unusual for someone who worked in a restaurant. Maya had always attributed it to her grandmother's upbringing in Taiwan before immigrating to America. She'd never questioned it deeper than that. Now she wondered what else she'd missed. The next morning, Maya left the hospital after spending the night sleeping in a chair by the NICU. The nurses had assured her that the girls were stable and that she needed rest. She'd pumped breast milk, labeled the bottles, and left detailed instructions even though she'd only be gone a few hours. The building at 875 North Michigan Avenue was everything she'd expected. Gleaming glass and steel, marble floors, security that required identification before allowing access to the upper floors. The law firm occupied the entire 40th floor, and the elevator opened directly into a reception area that screamed old money and discretion. "Miss Chen, welcome." The receptionist stood immediately. "Mr. Chen is expecting you. Please follow me." They walked past offices and conference rooms, past lawyers in expensive suits who glanced at Maya with curiosity. She was still wearing the clothes she'd worn to the hospital, jeans and a Northwestern sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked exactly like what she was, a new mother who'd spent the night in a hospital chair. Robert Chen's office was at the end of a long hallway, a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a stunning view of Lake Michigan. The man himself stood when Maya entered, moving around his massive desk to greet her with a warm handshake. He was in his 70s, impeccably dressed in a dark suit with silver hair and the same kind eyes Maya remembered from his photo. But it was his expression that struck her. He looked at her with a mixture of relief and sadness, as if he'd been waiting for this meeting for a very long time. "Maya, thank you for coming. Please, sit down. Can I offer you tea?" "I'm fine, thank you." Maya sat in one of the leather chairs facing his desk, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Mr. Chen, I need you to be straight with me. Is this real, or is this some kind of elaborate scam?" He smiled gently. "It's very real. And please, call me Uncle Robert. Your grandmother was my sister." The revelation hit Maya like a physical blow. "Your sister? But you have different last names." "I took my wife's surname when we married. It's not uncommon in some Chinese families when the wife's family needs an heir to carry on the name. But yes, Mei Ling and I were siblings. I was older by 7 years, and I watched her grow from a brilliant child into an extraordinary woman." He walked to a safe built into the wall behind his desk and retrieved a thick envelope, worn with age. Maya's name was written on it in her grandmother's distinctive handwriting. She wrote this 5 years ago, when she was first diagnosed with the heart condition that eventually took her life. "She made me promise not to give it to you until you became a mother." Maya took the envelope with trembling hands. The paper felt fragile, precious. She ran her fingers over her name, written in the same hand that had signed permission slips and birthday cards throughout her childhood. "May I have some privacy to read this?" "Of course. Take all the time you need. I'll be just outside." After Robert left, closing the door softly behind him, Maya carefully opened the envelope. Inside were several pages covered in her grandmother's neat script, written in both English and Chinese. Maya began to read. "My dearest Maya, if you are reading this, it means you have become a mother, and I am no longer with you to see your children. My heart aches at the thought of missing this precious time, but I also rejoice knowing that you have experienced the greatest blessing life can offer. There is so much I need to tell you, so many truths I kept hidden because I wanted to protect you. But now that you are a mother yourself, you will understand why I made the choices I did, and perhaps you will forgive me for the secrets I kept. I was born Chen Mei Ling in Taipei, Taiwan in 1945, the daughter of Chen Wei Guo and his wife Lin Shu Fen. My father was already building what would become Pacific Century Holdings, though in those days it was just a small import-export business. My mother came from a family of scholars and artists, and she taught me to value education and culture above wealth. When I was young, I believed that money could solve any problem, buy any happiness. I married a man my father approved of, a successful businessman from a good family. It was a disaster. He wanted a trophy wife, someone to display at parties and produce heirs. He didn't want a partner, a companion, someone with her own thoughts and dreams. I divorced him, which was scandalous in our community at that time. My father was furious. He threatened to cut me off completely. But I had learned something valuable. Money without love, without respect, without true partnership is just gold-plated misery. Years later, I met your grandfather, James Chen, at a university lecture in Berkeley. He was a graduate student in chemistry, brilliant but poor, working 3 jobs to pay for his education. He had no idea who I was, no idea about my family's wealth. He loved me for myself, for my laugh, my intelligence, my dreams. We married despite my family's objections. I gave up my claim to the family business, or so everyone thought. In truth, my father had already transferred substantial assets into a trust for me, with the understanding that I would never have to ask him for anything again. Your grandfather and I had a beautiful marriage, cut short when he died in a laboratory accident when your mother was only 10 years old. I could have returned to Taiwan then, could have reclaimed my position in the family business, but I chose to stay in America and raise your mother with the values your grandfather and I had shared. When your mother grew up and married your father, I was so happy for her. Your father was a good man, hard-working and devoted to your mother. They built a modest life together, and they were happy. That's what I wanted you to see, Maya, that happiness doesn't come from money, but from love and purpose and integrity. After your parents died in that terrible accident, I made the hardest decision of my life. I could have raised you surrounded by wealth and privilege, could have sent you to the most expensive schools, could have given you everything money could buy. But I had watched too many children of wealthy families grow up entitled and hollow, their character softened by privilege. So I chose to raise you simply. I took a job in my friend's restaurant, not because I needed the money, but because I wanted you to see the value of work. I lived in a small apartment because I wanted you to understand that home is about love, not square footage. I sent you to public schools because I wanted you to learn alongside children from all backgrounds. But I never stopped being Chen Mei-ling, daughter of Chen Wei-guo. My brother Robert managed my investments and the family business holdings. Every year the wealth grew. Every year I wondered if I was doing the right thing by keeping this secret from you. Now you know the truth. And with it comes responsibility. The trust I established for you is now worth approximately $3.7 billion. This includes my shares in Pacific Century Holdings, real estate holdings across 3 continents, investment portfolios, and various business interests. You are now one of the wealthiest women in the world. But Maya, my darling granddaughter, this money is not just for you. It is a tool, a responsibility, a trust that I am placing in your hands because I know the woman you have become. You have your grandfather's brilliant mind and your mother's compassionate heart. You have been raised to value hard work and integrity. You will not be corrupted by this wealth because you know what truly matters. Use this money wisely. Help others. Build something meaningful. Raise your children to understand that wealth is a responsibility, not a right. Teach them what I taught you, that character matters more than bank accounts, that dignity matters more than designer labels, that love matters more than luxury. I'm sorry I won't be there to meet your children. I'm sorry I kept this secret for so long. But I hope you understand why I made these choices. I wanted you to know who you were before you knew what you had. You are Maya Chen, And you are extraordinary, not because of the money you've inherited, but because of the person you've become. All my love. Always. Grandma Maya read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. She could hear her grandmother's voice in every word, could feel her love and wisdom reaching across the distance between life and death. The door opened quietly and Robert entered carrying a box of tissues. He set them on the desk beside her without speaking, giving her space to process. "She loved you very much," he said finally. "Watching you from a distance while pretending to have so little, it killed her sometimes. But she was convinced it was the right thing to do." Maya wiped her eyes. She was right. If I'd grown up knowing about this money, I would have been a different person. Probably a worse person. Your grandmother believed that. She also believed you needed to experience hardship, to understand struggle, before you could properly wield the power that comes with significant wealth. "The timing," Maya said slowly. "She wanted me to receive this after I became a mother. She knew I'd need it most then." She was very wise and prescient. She knew that becoming a mother would either be your greatest blessing or your greatest challenge, possibly both, and she wanted to make sure you had the resources to protect your children. Maya thought about Lily and Grace in the NICU, about Marcus's abandonment, about the divorce papers and empty bank accounts. Her grandmother had prepared for this moment, had known that motherhood would test her in ways she couldn't imagine. "I don't know what to do with this much money." "You don't have to figure it all out today. We have time." Robert pulled out several folders from his desk. "But there are some immediate practical matters we need to address. Your grandmother's estate is complex, and there are legal steps we need to take to transfer everything into your name." "How long will that take?" "With the groundwork we've already laid, about 2 weeks for the initial transfers. Some of the international holdings will take longer, but you'll have access to liquid assets within days." Days. Maya tried to wrap her mind around that timeline. Days from now, she would have access to billions of dollars. Days from now, her entire life would be transformed. "There's something else you should know," Robert continued carefully. "Your grandmother left specific instructions about how you should handle difficult situations. She was very concerned about people who might try to take advantage of you, manipulate you, or treat you poorly because they underestimated you." "What kind of instructions?" Robert's smile was sharp. "Your grandmother believed in allowing people to reveal their true nature before responding to their cruelty. She called it giving them enough rope. Let me show you what she planned." He opened one of the folders and spread documents across the desk. Maya leaned forward, reading through her grandmother's detailed strategies for dealing with various scenarios: business competitors, fortune hunters, racist discrimination, family conflicts. One section made Maya's breath catch. "If my granddaughter's husband should prove unfaithful or abusive, particularly during pregnancy or early motherhood." Her grandmother had anticipated even this. The documents laid out a comprehensive plan for protecting Maya and any children from an unfaithful spouse, including legal strategies, financial protections, and even private investigator services. "She thought of everything," Maya whispered. Mei Ling was brilliant at reading people and situations. She knew that wealth attracts predators, and she wanted to make sure you were protected. Robert paused. "I understand your husband recently left you." "How did you know?" "I've been keeping a discreet eye on your situation since your grandmother's death. When you went into early labor and your husband didn't show up to the hospital, I became concerned. When he finally arrived and I learned why, well, let's just say I've been preparing for this conversation." Maya stared at him. You've been watching me for 2 years? Protecting you. There's a difference. Your grandmother made me promise to stay close, to be ready when you needed help. I have investigators who've been monitoring your safety, your marriage, your overall well-being. Not invasively. We weren't reading your mail or tapping your phones. But yes, we've been watching. So you know about Marcus and Chelsea, about the divorce papers. I know everything, including the fact that Marcus Williams has been systematically hiding assets and planning this divorce for months. I know about his affair timeline, his financial manipulations, and his family's racist attitudes toward you. Robert's voice hardened. Your grandmother would have been furious. What do I do? First, you don't sign those divorce papers. They're based on fraudulent financial disclosure. Marcus has significantly more assets than he's claiming, and our investigators have documented all of it. Second, you let me assign you the best family law attorney in Illinois. Third, you start learning about your inheritance so you can make informed decisions about your future. Maya nodded slowly, her mind racing. The house. Marcus offered me. I can't afford it on my own. You can afford to buy the entire neighborhood if you want, but that's not the point. The point is making sure you and your daughters are protected, that Marcus faces appropriate consequences for his actions, and that you have the freedom to build whatever life you choose. Over the next hour, Robert walked Maya through the basics of her inheritance. The numbers were staggering. Real estate holdings worth over $800 million, investment portfolios spanning multiple markets, business interests that generated tens of millions in annual income. There were properties in San Francisco, New York, London, Hong Kong, and Taipei. There were art collections, rare books, jewelry that had belonged to her great-grandmother. This is overwhelming, Maya admitted. It's supposed to be. Your grandmother didn't expect you to manage everything yourself. That's why she built a team. Robert handed her a list of names. These are the people who've been managing your grandmother's affairs for decades. They're trustworthy, competent, and loyal to your family. They'll help you learn everything you need to know. I have to get back to the hospital. My daughters. Of course. But Maya, before you go, there's one more thing. Robert pulled out another folder. Your grandmother set aside a special fund specifically for medical expenses, education, and security for any great-grandchildren she might have. Currently, that fund contains $500 million, and it's specifically designated for your daughters. Maya felt tears welling up again. Her grandmother, who'd never met Lily and Grace, had still prepared for them, had still made sure they would be protected and provided for. When can I access the medical fund? The NICU bills, already handled. I took the liberty of contacting the hospital's billing department this morning and arranging for a trust account to cover all medical expenses related to your daughter's care. The hospital administrator was very understanding once I explained the situation. You did that without asking me? I did that because your grandmother would have wanted it, and because those babies shouldn't have to wait for bureaucracy while you learn to navigate your new circumstances. Robert's expression softened. Maya, you're going to have to get used to people helping you, not because you're weak or incapable, but because you now have resources that allow you to accept help without shame or obligation. Maya left the law office in a daze, her mind struggling to process everything she'd learned. She had a family she'd never known about, wealth beyond comprehension, and a grandmother whose love had reached beyond the grave to protect her. Her phone rang as she was getting into an Uber to return to the hospital. Marcus's number flashed on the screen. Have you had a chance to review the divorce papers? He asked without preamble. My attorney needs to know if you're going to sign voluntarily or if we need to proceed with formal service. Maya thought about the documents in Robert's office, about the investigators who documented Marcus's hidden assets and affair timeline, about the legal team now working on her behalf. "I'm not signing anything," she said calmly. "Maya, be reasonable. I'm offering you a fair settlement. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." "Fair? You want me to take over mortgage payments on a house I can't afford while you keep the condo, the vacation property, and most of our savings? You want minimal child support for premature twins who will have extensive medical needs. And you did all this after draining our joint accounts without my knowledge." "I earned that money," Marcus shot back. "You were just a student. You contributed nothing financially to our marriage." "I see. Well, Marcus, I think we should let the lawyers handle this from now on. You'll be hearing from my attorney next week." "Your attorney? Maya, you can't afford an attorney. Don't be stupid about this." "I'll manage. Give my regards to Chelsea and to your parents." She hung up before he could respond, her hands shaking with a mixture of fury and satisfaction. Let him think she was bluffing. Let him think she was helpless. Her grandmother had taught her patience. She would use it now. Back at the hospital, Maya found the NICU in a state of controlled chaos. Dr. Patterson, the neonatologist, was at Lily's incubator with several nurses, adjusting monitors and ventilator settings. "What's wrong?" Maya rushed over, her heart in her throat. "Nothing's wrong, everything's right." Dr. Patterson turned with a huge smile. "Lily just extubated herself, pulled the breathing tube right out and started breathing on her own. She's maintaining her oxygen levels perfectly." Maya stared at her daughter, this tiny fighter who wasn't even 4 pounds yet, breathing independently for the first time. Grace was watching her sister from the neighboring incubator, her own little chest rising and falling with the help of her ventilator. "Can I hold her?" "Absolutely. Let's get her settled on your chest." As the nurse helped Maya settle into the rocking chair and placed Lily skin to skin on her chest, Maya felt something shift inside her. Her daughter's tiny heartbeat against her own, the miraculous rise and fall of independent breathing, the warmth of this new life, it all crystallized into absolute clarity. She was a mother. She was a billionaire. She was Chen-Williams' granddaughter. And she was done being underestimated. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Patricia Williams. Marcus told me you're being difficult about the divorce. I suggest you reconsider. The Williams family has resources you can't imagine, and we won't hesitate to use them to protect Marcus's interests." Maya smiled and typed back a single sentence. "I look forward to it." She had no idea that in 6 weeks, she would stand in a courtroom and watch the Williams family's world crumble. She had no idea that Marcus would discover exactly who he'd abandoned. She had no idea that her grandmother's carefully laid plans would intersect with the Williams family's arrogance in the most spectacular way possible. All she knew in that moment was that her daughters deserved better than the future Marcus had planned for them. And thanks to her grandmother's wisdom and love, Maya now had the power to give it to them. The NICU nurse, Sarah, came over to check on them. "Your daughter is remarkable. Fighting spirit like I've rarely seen." "She gets it from her great-grandmother," Maya said softly, looking down at Lily's perfect little face. Outside the hospital windows, Chicago's skyline gleamed in the afternoon sun. Somewhere in that city, Marcus Williams was celebrating his freedom, planning his new life with Chelsea, confident that he'd successfully discarded the burden of his first family. He had no idea what was coming, and Maya was going to enjoy every moment of his enlightenment. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of NICU visits, legal consultations, and crash courses in wealth management. Robert had been right. Her grandmother's team was extraordinary. Within 5 days, Maya had access to enough liquid assets to handle any immediate needs. Within 10 days, the full scope of her inheritance had been transferred into her name. Grace came off her ventilator on day 12, breathing on her own and immediately proving she was just as stubborn as her sister. The twins were still tiny, still in the NICU, but growing stronger every day. Maya had moved out of the house she'd shared with Marcus and into a hotel suite that Robert's assistant had arranged. The suite was larger than her entire previous house, with a full kitchen, separate bedroom, and enough space for the specialized medical equipment the twins would need when they came home. She'd expected to feel guilty about the luxury, but instead, she felt relief. No more memories of Marcus in every room. No more evidence of the life she'd thought she was building. Marcus had been calling and texting constantly, his tone shifting from condescending to angry to desperate as he realized Maya wasn't going to simply accept his terms. She ignored all of it, following her attorney's advice to let him spiral. Her attorney was Catherine Morrison, a fierce litigator who'd built her reputation destroying unfaithful spouses in divorce court. She was 60 years old, brilliant, and absolutely ruthless when protecting her clients. "Your husband made several critical mistakes," Catherine had told Maya during their first meeting. "He assumed you were powerless. He documented his affair extensively through email and text messages. He drained joint accounts without proper legal authority, and, most importantly, he significantly understated his assets in the divorce papers he gave you." "How much did he understate them?" "Marcus Williams is worth approximately $12 million, not the $4 million he claimed. He's been hiding money in offshore accounts and through his parents' various business entities. We have proof of all of it." "What does that mean for the divorce?" Catherine's smile had been predatory. "It means we're going to take him apart piece by piece in front of a judge. But Maya, I need to ask, what do you want from this? Revenge? Justice? Maximum financial settlement?" Maya had thought carefully before answering. "I want my daughters protected. I want Marcus to face consequences for his actions. And I want everyone who underestimated me to understand who I really am. Then let's give them a show they'll never forget." 3 weeks after the divorce papers had been served, Maya received a call from the NICU. The twins were ready to go home. She arrived at the hospital to find the entire NICU staff gathered around the girls' incubators, celebrating with balloons and a cake. Lily was up to 5 pounds, Grace to 4 pounds 12 ounces. Both were feeding well, maintaining their temperature, and showing no signs of the complications that often plagued premature babies. "They're miracle babies," Dr. Patterson said, helping Maya prepare for the discharge. "I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've rarely seen premature twins do this well, this quickly." As Maya was signing the discharge papers, Marcus appeared in the doorway of the NICU. He looked terrible. Unshaven, his suit wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. "Maya, we need to talk." "I have nothing to say to you, Marcus. My attorney is handling everything." "Your attorney is asking for ridiculous things. Full custody, maximum child support, half of my assets. This is insane." Maya finished signing the papers and turned to face him. "What's insane is you thinking you could abandon your premature daughters and face no consequences." "I'm not abandoning them. I'm willing to do reasonable visitation and support." "Reasonable." Maya kept her voice low, aware of the NICU staff trying not to eavesdrop. "You call it reasonable to offer me $800 a month in child support when your daughters will need specialized medical care, therapy, and monitoring for years? You call it reasonable to leave me with a mortgage I can't afford while you keep most of our assets? I'm being more than fair considering you contributed nothing financially to our marriage." "Get out, Marcus." "Maya, get out of this NICU before I call security. You don't get to stand here and pretend you care about your daughters when you abandoned them at 3 days old." Marcus left, and Maya could hear him on his phone in the hallway, voice raised in anger as he called his attorney. The NICU social worker, an older woman named Linda, approached Maya carefully. "Mrs. Williams, is everything okay? Do you need us to restrict your husband's access? Soon he won't be my husband anymore. And yes, please restrict his access. He's only allowed to see the girls with my explicit permission and a nurse present." Linda nodded approvingly. "Good for you. I've seen too many women cave to pressure from men who don't deserve access to their children. He made his choice. Now he gets to live with it." The drive home with the twins was terrifying and exhilarating. Maya had hired a specialized medical transport service to make sure everything was safe, but still, watching her tiny daughters in their car seats, she felt the weight of responsibility settling fully onto her shoulders. They arrived at the hotel suite to find it transformed. Robert had sent a team to set up a complete nursery, 2 cribs, a changing table, a rocker, and every piece of equipment the twins might need. There was also a night nurse waiting, a kind-faced woman named Rose, who'd been specially trained in caring for premature multiples. "Your uncle thought you might need some help the first few weeks," Rose explained. "I'm here whenever you need me, nights, days, whatever works best." Maya wanted to protest that she could handle it herself, but looking at her daughters, she realized that pride was foolish. She did need help. Accepting it didn't make her weak. That night, as she sat in the rocker with both girls on her chest, Maya heard her phone buzz. A text from Patricia Williams. "We need to discuss Marcus's visitation rights. My attorney will be contacting yours tomorrow." Maya smiled and texted back, "Looking forward to it." She had no idea that Patricia Williams had no clue who she was really threatening. She had no idea that the Williams family's attorneys were about to discover they were facing one of the most powerful legal teams in the country. She had no idea that in 4 weeks, everything would come to a head in a courtroom showdown that would leave the Williams family in ruins. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 4 weeks later, a formality to establish temporary custody and support arrangements while the divorce proceeded. Marcus's attorney had requested it, confident that a judge would see through Maya's excessive demands and establish reasonable terms. Catherine Morrison had smiled when she received the request. They have no idea what they're walking into. The day before the hearing, Robert called with news. The private investigators finished their report on Marcus and his family. You need to see this. Maya met him at his office, where he spread documents across the conference table. Phone records showing Marcus had been planning the divorce for over 6 months. Financial records proving he'd been systematically moving money into accounts Maya didn't know about. Text messages between Marcus and his mother discussing the problem of those babies and how to minimize Marcus's obligations. But the most damning evidence was a recorded conversation between Marcus, Chelsea, and his parents, discussing how they planned to use the divorce to get rid of the Chinese gold digger and her mongrel babies. Maya felt ice form in her veins. They called my daughters mongrels. Yes, and they had no idea they were being recorded. Marcus's phone had malware from clicking on a phishing link, completely legal for us to obtain the data through proper channels. I want them destroyed. Robert nodded. Catherine is ready, but Maya, I need to warn you, this is going to get ugly. Once we present this evidence, the Williams family will realize they've made a terrible mistake. They'll try to negotiate, to settle, to make it go away. I don't want to settle. I want justice. Then that's what you'll get. The morning of the hearing, Maya dressed carefully in a simple black suit that cost more than Marcus had spent on her entire wardrobe during their marriage. She wore her grandmother's jade pendant, the one that had been passed down through 4 generations of Chen women. And she had her daughters with her. Rose had brought them to the courthouse in a specialized double stroller, both babies dressed in matching outfits that had been gifts from Robert. The courtroom was smaller than Maya expected, with just a few rows of benches. Marcus sat with his attorney on one side. Next to him were his parents, Richard and Patricia Williams, both dressed in expensive suits and wearing expressions of smug superiority. Maya took her seat with Catherine, the twins in their stroller between them. She saw Patricia's expression when she noticed the babies, a flash of disgust quickly masked by cool indifference. The judge, a black woman in her 50s named Judge Andrea Thompson, entered and everyone stood. She took her seat and reviewed the files in front of her before looking up. This is a preliminary hearing to establish temporary custody and support arrangements while divorce proceedings continue between Marcus Williams and Maya Chen-Williams. Mr. Williams has petitioned for 50-50 custody and minimal child support obligations. Mrs. Williams has petitioned for full custody with supervised visitation and substantial child support. Let's begin. Marcus's attorney, a slick-looking man named David Sterling, stood. Your Honor, my client is a successful attorney who has always been a devoted father. The children in question are only 6 weeks old, and my client is requesting reasonable shared custody arrangements with his soon-to-be ex-wife. Unfortunately, Mrs. Williams is being unreasonable in her demands, clearly motivated by vindictiveness rather than the children's best interests. Judge Thompson looked at Maya. Mrs. Williams, what do you have to say? Catherine stood smoothly. Your Honor, I have evidence that will demonstrate Mr. Williams's unfitness as a custodial parent and his attempt to defraud this court regarding his financial circumstances. David Sterling objected loudly, but Judge Thompson raised a hand. I'll hear it. Present your evidence, Ms. Morrison. What followed was a systematic dismantling of Marcus Williams that would have made Maya's grandmother proud. Catherine presented financial records showing Marcus had understated his net worth by more than $8 million. She presented phone records proving the affair had begun while Maya was pregnant. She presented text messages showing Marcus and Chelsea discussing their plans to minimize obligations to the old family. But the killing blow came when Catherine played the recorded conversation. Marcus's voice came through clearly. The babies were a mistake. I never wanted them. Once the divorce is final, I'll see them as little as legally required and pay as little as possible. Chelsea and I are starting fresh with our family, the right family. Patricia Williams's voice joined in. Those girls will never be real Williams anyway. Mixed blood, premature, probably damaged from being born so early. Better to cut ties now and focus on the legitimate grandchildren Chelsea will give us. The courtroom went silent. Judge Thompson's expression was thunderous. Is there more? She asked quietly. Yes, Your Honor. Catherine presented hospital records showing Marcus hadn't visited his daughters in the NICU for the first 2 weeks of their lives. She presented statements from nurses documenting his dismissive attitude toward the babies and his cruel comments to Maya while she was recovering from childbirth. Marcus was pale, his attorney frantically whispering in his ear. His parents sat frozen, Patricia's face drained of all color. Your Honor, David Sterling tried desperately. These recordings may have been obtained illegally. They were obtained legally through malware on Mr. Williams's phone, as the documentation I'm providing shows, Catherine interrupted smoothly. All procedures were properly followed. Judge Thompson was looking at Marcus with undisguised contempt. Mr. Williams, do you have anything to say for yourself? Marcus stood shakily. Your Honor, I was upset when I said those things. You didn't mean to call your daughters mongrels? You didn't mean to say they were a mistake? You didn't mean to plan to minimize your obligations to them? Judge Thompson's voice was ice. Mr. Williams, I've been a family court judge for 15 years. I've heard every excuse, every justification, every attempt to minimize parental responsibility. But I have never heard a father describe his own children with such contempt. She turned to Maya. Mrs. Williams, I see you have your daughters here today. Yes, Your Honor. Lily and Grace. May I see them? Rose brought the stroller forward. Judge Thompson looked down at the two tiny babies, both awake and alert, looking around with curious eyes. They're beautiful. And they're premature? They were born at 32 weeks, Your Honor. They spent 4 weeks in the NICU and came home 2 weeks ago. They're doing remarkably well now. Judge Thompson's expression softened as she looked at the babies, then hardened again when she turned back to Marcus. Here's my ruling. Full physical custody to Mrs. Williams. Mr. Williams may have supervised visitation for 1 hour per week at a location and time of Mrs. Williams's choosing. He is forbidden from bringing his girlfriend or his parents to these visits. Child support is set at $5,000 per month per child, plus all medical expenses not covered by insurance. This is a temporary order, but I strongly suggest Mr. Williams use this time to consider whether he wants to be a father at all. Because if he thinks I'm being harsh now, wait until we get to the final hearing. David Sterling stood. Your Honor, my client cannot afford $10,000 per month. Your client understated his assets by $8 million. I think he can manage. And if he can't, perhaps he should reconsider his plans to purchase a $2 million home with his girlfriend. Yes, I saw that in the evidence too. Judge Thompson stood. This hearing is concluded. All parties are ordered to exchange full financial disclosure within 2 weeks. The final hearing is scheduled for 2 months from today. And Mr. and Mrs. Williams? She looked at Marcus's parents. If you want to have a relationship with your granddaughter someday, I suggest you reconsider your attitude. Those babies are American citizens with every right to dignity and respect. Court adjourned. The gavel came down like a hammer blow. Marcus and his family fled the courtroom, David Sterling scrambling to gather papers and chase after them. Maya sat still, holding both her daughters, trying to process what had just happened. Catherine sat beside her and squeezed her shoulder. That was the most satisfying hearing of my career. Is it really over? The temporary phase is. Now we negotiate the final terms. But Maya, after what just happened in there, I'd be shocked if Marcus doesn't try to settle. His reputation is destroyed. Every lawyer in Chicago is going to hear about this hearing. His parents' social circle will find out about those comments. They're done. Robert appeared in the courtroom doorway. I thought you might want to know. There are reporters outside. Someone tipped them off about this hearing. How did they find out? Robert's smile was enigmatic. These things have a way of getting out. Are you ready to face them? Maya thought about her grandmother's letter, about patience and strategy, and allowing people to reveal their true nature. The Williams family had revealed themselves spectacularly. Now it was time for Maya to reveal who she really was. I'm ready. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters and cameras. Maya stood at the top with Catherine on one side and Robert on the other, her daughters in her arms. Rose stood just behind her, ready to take the babies if needed. The questions came fast. Mrs. Williams, is it true your husband called your daughters mongrels? How do you respond to the Williams family's comments about your daughters? Will you accept a settlement? Maya waited until the noise died down, then spoke clearly and calmly. My name is Maya Chen-Williams. and I am the granddaughter of Chen Mei Ling, daughter of Chen Wei Guo, and heir to Pacific Century Holdings. My grandmother raised me to value character over wealth, integrity over status, and love over luxury. She taught me that true strength comes from knowing who you are, regardless of what others think you're worth. The reporters had gone silent, scribbling frantically or recording every word. 6 weeks ago, I gave birth to my daughters Lily and Grace at 32 weeks. They were premature, tiny, fighting for every breath. Their father served me with divorce papers while they were in the NICU, telling me he was leaving me for his pregnant girlfriend. His family supported this decision, calling my daughters mongrels and half-breeds who would never be real Williams. She paused, letting that sink in. What the Williams family didn't know is that I'm not the helpless woman they thought I was. My grandmother left me a substantial inheritance, approximately $3.7 billion, with specific instructions to use it to protect my family and stand up to those who would try to diminish us because of our race or circumstances. The reporters erupted with questions, but Maya continued over them. I'm not here to seek revenge. I'm here to make sure my daughters grow up knowing their worth, knowing that no one, not their father, not their paternal grandparents, not anyone, gets to decide they're less than they are because of who their mother is or what they look like. The Williams family thought they could throw us away because we weren't good enough for them. Today they learned that sometimes the people you underestimate are the ones you should have feared most. A reporter called out, "Will you forgive your husband?" Maya looked down at her daughters, both sleeping peacefully against her chest. Forgiveness is for them to earn, not for me to give freely. My focus is on my daughters and their future. The Williams family can focus on their own. Another reporter, "What will you do with your inheritance?" My grandmother believed wealth was a responsibility, not a privilege. I'll be establishing a foundation to support mothers in difficult circumstances, premature babies and their families, and organizations fighting racial discrimination. The Chen Legacy Foundation will ensure that what happened to my family helps others in similar situations. The press conference continued for another 20 minutes, with Maya fielding questions about her grandmother, the inheritance, and her plans. Through it all, she remained calm and composed, channeling Chen Mei Ling's dignity and strength. When she finally left the courthouse, it was to find a sleek black SUV waiting. Robert's doing, undoubtedly. As they drove away, Maya could see reporters still swarming the steps, their cameras and microphones trained on the next person to emerge. "That was brave," Catherine said from the front seat. "That was necessary," Maya corrected. "My daughters need to know their mother wasn't afraid to stand up for them." Her phone was already buzzing with messages. Some from reporters requesting interviews, some from people she hadn't heard from in years, and one from Marcus's attorney. "We need to talk about settlement terms." Maya smiled and showed it to Catherine. "Let them sweat for a while," Catherine advised. "They're panicking. Good. Panic makes people make mistakes." That evening, Maya sat in the nursery of her hotel suite, nursing both girls while CNN played news coverage of the courthouse steps press conference. The chyron read, "Billionaire heiress reveals identity in divorce case. Williams family faces backlash." The Williams family was indeed facing backlash. Richard Williams had released a statement claiming the recordings were taken out of context and that they loved all their grandchildren equally. Nobody was buying it. Within hours, 3 of Richard's biggest clients had terminated their relationships with his investment firm. Patricia's charity board had requested her resignation. Marcus's law firm had issued a statement saying they were investigating the matter. Marcus himself had gone silent, his phone off, his social media accounts deleted. The next morning brought more consequences. The Chicago Tribune ran a front-page story about the case, complete with photos from the press conference and excerpts from the recorded conversation. The headline read, "When Privilege Meets Prejudice, the Williams family's $3.7 billion mistake." The article detailed everything: Marcus's affair, the divorce timeline, the recordings, and Maya's revelation of her inheritance. It painted the Williams family as exactly what they were: wealthy, entitled people who'd thought they could discard a woman they viewed as beneath them, only to discover they'd made an enemy of someone far more powerful than they'd imagined. By noon, Marcus's attorney called Catherine's office. By 2 p.m., they were in a conference room negotiating settlement terms. David Sterling looked like he hadn't slept. "My client is willing to relinquish all parental rights in exchange for termination of child support obligations." Catherine didn't even look up from her notes. "Absolutely not. Your client doesn't get to abandon his children and walk away clean. He created these babies. He has obligations to them whether he wants them or not." "Then what are you proposing?" Catherine slid a document across the table. "Full custody to Maya with 0 visitation rights unless the girls request contact when they're old enough to make that choice. Child support of $15,000 per month per child until age 18, plus all medical expenses, education costs, and a $10 million trust fund for each girl to be established immediately. Marcus also signs away any claim to Maya's inheritance or future earnings." David's face turned red. $30,000 per month plus $20 million in trust funds? That's extortion. That's consequence. Your client called his daughters mongrels. He abandoned them in the NICU. He tried to defraud the court about his assets. He doesn't deserve the privilege of walking away easily. He'll never agree to this. Catherine's smile was sharp. "Then we'll see him in court in 2 months, where I'll present evidence of his affair timeline, his hidden assets, his attempts to coerce Maya into signing unfair divorce terms, and his family's racist attitudes toward his children. By the time I'm done, Marcus Williams won't be able to practice law in this state, much less maintain his lifestyle." "You're destroying him." "He destroyed himself. We're just making sure he can't destroy anyone else." The settlement negotiations continued for 3 days. Finally, Marcus caved on almost everything. He agreed to terminate his parental rights, establish the trust funds, pay child support until the girls were 18, and sign a non-disclosure agreement preventing him from ever publicly discussing the divorce, the children, or Maya's family. In exchange, Maya agreed not to pursue criminal charges for financial fraud and to allow Marcus to claim the divorce was by mutual agreement rather than fault-based. When Catherine brought Maya the final settlement agreement to review, she paused before signing. "Is this what my grandmother would have wanted?" "Your grandmother wanted your daughters protected and the people who hurt you to face consequences. This does both." Maya signed. 3 weeks later, the divorce was finalized in a closed hearing. Marcus didn't attend. He'd already left Chicago, moving to Seattle to start over with a new law firm that apparently hadn't done thorough background checks. Chelsea had broken up with him when she realized there was no money left after the settlement. She'd lost her baby in a miscarriage at 5 months, and Marcus had left her in the hospital alone while he dealt with lawyers. The Williams family had lost their social standing, their business relationships, and their reputation. Richard's investment firm was under investigation by the SEC for unrelated fraud. Patricia had been dropped from every charity board in Chicago. They'd released a statement claiming they'd been misunderstood and that they regretted any hurt feelings. But the damage was done. Maya's life, meanwhile, had transformed completely. She'd moved into a penthouse that Robert had helped her purchase, with enough space for the girls to grow up surrounded by beauty and love. She'd enrolled in an executive MBA program to learn how to properly manage her inheritance. She'd hired a team of nannies, assistants, and security to help her navigate her new life. But most importantly, she'd established the Chen Legacy Foundation with an initial endowment of $500 million. The foundation would support mothers in crisis, premature babies, and organizations fighting racial discrimination. The first grant had gone to the NICU, where Lily and Grace had spent their first month of life. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Maya stood in her grandmother's study in the Taipei estate that was now hers. She'd brought the girls to Taiwan to meet their great-uncle Robert and to see where their great-great-grandfather had built his empire. On the desk was a photograph of Chen-Mei-ling from the 1960s, young and beautiful, wearing a traditional qipao and holding a baby that Maya now realized was her own mother. Next to it was a letter Maya had written but never sent, a thank you to her grandmother for the wisdom, the patience, and the protection that had saved her family. Her phone rang. Catherine, calling from Chicago. "I thought you'd want to know. Marcus was fired from his new firm. Turns out someone sent them copies of the recordings and court documents. He's claiming you violated the NDA. We didn't. But I may know who did." Maya thought of the extensive Chen family network, the people who'd been protecting her from the shadows for years. "Should we be worried?" "No. Let him try to prove it. He has no evidence, no resources, and no credibility." After hanging up, Maya walked to the nursery where Rose was reading to the twins. At 8 months old, they were thriving, ahead of their adjusted age in every developmental milestone, curious and active, and absolutely adored by everyone who met them. Lily saw her mother and reached out with chubby arms. Grace was right behind her, both girls babbling in the pre-language sounds that made Maya's heart swell. She gathered them both close, breathing in their baby scent, marveling at how far they'd all come from that terrifying night in the NICU. Marcus had thrown them away, thinking they were worthless. The Williams family had tried to erase them, to diminish them, to make them feel less than human. Instead, they'd awakened a legacy of strength, wisdom, and power that spanned 5 generations. They'd discovered that sometimes the people you underestimate are the ones who change everything. Maya's phone buzzed with a news alert. Marcus Williams had been arrested for tax fraud related to his hidden offshore accounts. The investigation had apparently been triggered by evidence submitted anonymously to the IRS. She smiled and kissed both her daughters on the head. Her grandmother had taught her that patience was power, that allowing people to reveal their true nature was the best revenge, that justice, when it finally arrived, was always worth the wait. Chen-Mei-ling had built an empire to protect her family. Maya would spend the rest of her life making sure that protection extended to others who needed it. The twins deserved a world where being different wasn't a disadvantage, where being underestimated wasn't a weakness, where mothers and children were valued regardless of their race or circumstances. And thanks to her grandmother's wisdom and the Williams family's spectacular miscalculation, Maya now had the resources and the motivation to build exactly that world. Outside the window, Taipei glowed in the evening light, a city of old traditions and new possibilities. Inside, 2 little girls who'd been called mongrels and mistakes played happily, completely unaware that they'd already changed the world simply by surviving. Their great-grandmother would have been proud.